first of all. Thank you. We'll begin with this. President Trump is stepping up his push to Congress on one of his major campaign promises about keeping America safe. I am Harris Faulkner. Let's go outnumbered overtime. The president is laying out his proposals on immigration in exchange for a deal to protect so-called dreamers from deportation. The White House wish list includes building a wall along our border with Mexico. He also wants major changes to the legal immigration system, along with increased border security. White House counselor Kellyanne Conway says the president is putting the interests of Americans first.
We also want to build that border wall, full construction of the border wall, funding for it. We're going to limit chain migration to spouses and children because it's not fair to the American worker. And, you know, for years, this country, including Capitol Hill and the Swamp, they've always asked, what more can we do for the illegal immigrant? What's fair to the illegal immigrant? Right. This president is asking, what's fair to America? What's fair to the American worker? What's fair to the American community?
Talking about the swamp in D.C., Kristen Fisher with the news outside the White House. Tell us more.
Hey, Harris. Well, President Trump just sent over a list of demands, 70 demands to Congress. That's a lot, so there's a lot of room to negotiate. But his number one demand is the one demand that Democrats say is simply non-negotiable, and that is the complete funding and construction of his border wall. Also on the list, stop sanctuary cities by denying federal funding. He wants to hire 10,000 additional ICE agents and 600 prosecutors. He wants to end asylum abuse and establish a point-based system for green cards. The president says, quote, these findings outline reforms that must be included as part of any legislation addressing the status of DACA. So, in other words, those are his demands in exchange for a deal protecting the dreamers from deportation. Those are the roughly 800,000 young immigrants, many of whom were brought here to the U.S. illegally as children. But the top two Democrats on Capitol Hill say that that is not what they agreed to when they met the president and had that initial deal over Chinese food here at the White House just a few weeks ago. They put out a joint statement that reads in part, quote, we told the president at our meeting that we were open to reasonable border security measures alongside the DREAM Act, but this list goes so far beyond what is reasonable. This proposal fails to represent any attempt at compromise. No doubt the White House disagrees, and of course all of this hinges on the definition of reasonable. Here's what Kellyanne Conway said about that and how she responded to that statement this morning.
I'd like to know what Chuck Schumer thinks is reasonable. What's reasonable is to stop the flow of illegal immigrants and also of the drugs coming over the border. The president has been very clear about that, too. All the drugs coming over the border has to stop as well. And I'd like to know what Senator Schumer thinks is reasonable when we just see the statistics alone in terms of people flouting the law.
As for the president, Harris, right now he is at his golf club in Virginia for the third day in a row. It's a holiday weekend, of course. And today we are told that he is playing golf with Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. And I would imagine they have quite a bit to talk about, given the comments just made by his fellow Republican Senator Bob Corker.
We'll get into it later this hour as well, but we're going to tee up what you just gave us. Kristen Fisher, thank you very much. Let's, in fact, do a deeper dive on this with Tucker Carlson, the host of Tucker Carlson Tonight. Great to see you. You know, let's talk, if we can, Tucker, about these demands from the president, because they are a one-match, if you will, between what he said was his idea for keeping Americans first and safe, and now what he expects Congress to do. Things like a point-based green card system. Your thoughts?
These are the things that he ran on. This is what the last election was about. Nobody should be surprised. The coverage is describing these, quote, demands as hard line, but we just had a referendum on them. What's so interesting to me about this is that there's even a compromise necessary. Republicans have more, on paper anyway, power in Washington than any time in my lifetime. They have a president, again, who articulated all of this pretty clearly during the last election. Voters voted on it, ratified his views, and they can't pass it without Democratic support, which itself tells you a lot about the nature of the Democratic Party. The real sticking issue here is the wall, and I'm frustrated as just a newsreader and observer at how people who oppose the wall are never asked to account for why. Why, if you say you oppose illegal immigration, why are you against a wall? And the answer, of course, is they're not against illegal immigration. They're totally for it. Democrats want the new voters. Republicans want the cheap labor. And nobody is willing to say that out loud because no one's pushed to explain why they oppose it.
Well, and to take that reasoning further, then Democrats wouldn't just be for it. They're willing to shield those who come here to make sure that they get what they want in terms of that immigration that's coming in across the border with sanctuary cities, which the president hopes to shore up. I mean, look, his attorney general was already dealing with sanctuary cities in one way, but he wants to go even further than that with more legislation on the matter.
The idea that cities and municipalities should have to follow federal law is a settled debate. We had this in the 1950s around school desegregation. We've had it a bunch of different times. We've had this debate. Should the states be subject to federal law? And we all agreed, yes, that's why this is a country and not just a constellation of 50 separate countries. And yet no one, again, is being pushed on this. Nancy Pelosi last week congratulated in public on camera illegal immigrants for coming here illegally. You have a party, and I don't think I'm overstating this, she's the most powerful member of the House on the Democratic side. They are openly encouraging illegal immigration to this country. Why is that exactly? I mean, we could argue motive, but there's no debate about whether it's happening. It is. They're doing it publicly.
Yeah, and that's not even enough, though, Tucker, because you saw her get the bum rush at the lectern as she was speaking with some members in her own party. I mean, that's what I call it from where I'm from. When people kind of rush in, you got to take the mic out of their hand. You know, I want to get your last thoughts on that, too, because even within the Democratic Party, there seems to be, it's just not enough what they're pushing for. The Dreamers want more. And by the way, they never explain, Democrats, that, you know, this isn't a complete wipe away of where we've been with DACA. This is a reset button going forward, something that Democrats could have done under President Obama to shield them if they wanted to.
And what's the counter argument? So one of this, quote, demands the White House is asking for is a points-based immigration system. And it's a really simple concept. 1 billion people would move here tomorrow if we allowed them to. Why don't we see if we can get people to move here who benefit our country? Why is that a crazy idea? It's not, and it has overwhelming support if you ask the public that question in a poll, and it has been asked. And so what's the counter argument? What's the argument against that? That it's immoral to ask people to bring something when they move here?
But we know what the argument is. We know what the argument is, because the left wants the right to be made to look like they're heartless. I mean, you already know what the argument is. But the true heart in this would be to put legislation in place that protects everybody and actually has a plan. Hey, look, you know, I want to talk maybe at 37,000 feet about this, because I watch you on your show do this, and I want to go there with you, and that is where the mainstream media, many of them, are now joining Democrats and going after this president's wish list, not just on this issue, but a whole lot. Can we pop some of those up for our viewers? And you know what? You'll see this on the screen, Tucker, because people can read this on their own. You see the HuffPost, CNN, Daily News. I just want you to kind of go there with us on this and how the president can move forward if he's got this headwind.
So conservatives are upset because reporters don't like the president. And I got to say, that does not bother me. I think you're allowed to have distaste to someone personally. He doesn't like them. They don't like him. Fine. What it crosses the line from news coverage into propaganda, into dishonesty, is when you distort questions of policy. And that's what they're doing here. Rather than unpack this and explain what exactly is the White House asking for, and what exactly is the opposition to it? What's at stake here? What are they talking about? Tell me. I'm a news consumer. I want to know. Instead, they're framing it, putting a thumb on the scale and framing it as a contest between good and evil. And it's not that. Like all policy debates, this is very complex. And our job is to explain it to people, and they're not doing it. And that is offensive, I think.
Yeah, you remember when Hillary Clinton was running for president, they go low, we go high, she would say about Republicans and Democrats. And when you don't make your argument about the facts, well, which way are you going, actually? You're vilifying the other side without that. I just wanted to point out just one of these. This was the New York Daily News. Quote, the Trump administration releases immigration principles, leaving dreamers in limbo. No, that's what President Obama did. I mean, correct me when I'm wrong here. He puts in legislation, right? I mean, he's right, but he's on the executive branch, but he's able to do that. That actually left dreamers in limbo because somebody has to deal with that.
Someone has to write the law. Congress writes the laws. It's right there in the Constitution. President's not allowed to. And so all the people saying it's unfair what this or that either side is doing to the dreamers from the White House, no, it's the duty, it's the obligation of the Congress to make this a statutory matter. Pass a law if you don't like it. They are the lawmakers, after all. But the idea that any movement at all from the Democrats is a deal killer, it's a poison pill. I mean, the president, and I'm not defending Trump, I'm just saying as a factual matter, moved over and basically gave on the single key question, which is, are we going to give the Dreamers citizenship?
Yeah.
Yes, he said.
It is fascinating. Last word from you. What do you think they're talking about on that golf course today? He and Senator Lindsey Graham.
Honestly, they're talking about golf. I would bet you $100. They're talking about golf.
Legislation that'll bubble up. Who knows? Tucker Carlson, thank you. I want to remind everybody that you were our first guest on the original Outnumbered 3.5 years ago, and it's great to have you on Overtime.
Congratulations, Harris.
Thank
I'm
you.
watch every day.
Thank you. We'll see you tonight. President Trump tweeted, only one thing will work when it comes to dealing with North Korea. What did he mean? Well, we'll dig into that and whether it's time for talk is over with North Korea. And President Trump will reportedly decertify the Iran nuclear deal later this week. Is that a good move, or could it have unintended consequences? Ambassador John Bolton on board to talk about it, and he's going to remind us what's at stake. Pretty dire stuff. Stay close.
I can tell you I'm very unhappy with the deal. I'm very unhappy with their attitude. The spirit of the deal certainly is not there because they're all over the place causing trouble.
Fox News alert, President Trump hit social media saying only one thing will work when it comes to North Korea. What exactly is that one thing? What does it mean? The North's dictator Kim Jong-un is not backing down in this war of words. North Korean state TV is reporting he praised his nuclear arsenal as a, quote, powerful deterrent to the United States. And just today, President Trump tweeted, our country has been unsuccessfully dealing with North Korea for 25 years, giving billions of dollars and getting nothing. Policy didn't work. Let's bring in Ambassador John Bolton, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations and a Fox News contributor. Sir, always good to have you along. You and I have been going back and forth on email. And first, I know you want to tell us what's at stake. What is?
Well, the issue here is whether we're going to leave North Korea, and I might add Iran in a slightly different context. We're going to leave this regime in the possession of the most destructive weapon that mankind has ever wrought. And not just to threaten us, but perhaps to sell that device, the technology, nuclear materials, to other rogue states and terrorists. This is an incredibly significant decision. It's not just like some new conventional form of munitions. It's a qualitatively different. And the world has recognized that since 1945. This is an enormously important test for the president. He didn't create the problem, but he's inherited, and he's going to have to deal with it.
I want to draw attention to the left of our screen. We're showing some of those missile launches that are counter to the sanctions agreements and everything that the UN has said needs to be in place by North Korea. And we have a few of those to show. So we're putting those up. But what's at stake here, too, is just what the world will look like if a crazy man has this nuclear weapon and he remains unpredictable. So what do we do? What impresses you about what President Trump is doing and what concerns you moving forward?
Well, I think the most important thing is that he recognizes 25 years of effort over 3 different administrations to try and talk North Korea out of nuclear weapons has failed.
And he tweeted about that.
Several times, exactly. We've tried carrots, we've tried sticks. North Korea just simply continued to make progress. So I think he's exactly right in saying there's simply no point in talking to North Korea. I do think it's worth a sustained diplomatic effort to persuade China to give up its support for North Korea. The Chinese say they don't want North Korea to have nuclear weapons. Let's put them to the test here, because if they refuse to help us either by overthrowing the regime, merging the 2 Koreas effectively under South Korea's control, then I think the president's down really in very short period of time, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, to the real question, the hardest question of all, shall he use military force to prevent North Korea from going forward with this weapon?
Something that you would like to see the president do differently or more of going forward?
I don't think he has much choice, really. I think, as I say, when you look back at 25 years of failure, who can really say with a straight face? Who could say with a straight face, let's try year 26? I mean, it just doesn't work that way, and that's why his options are so limited.
So what is the only one thing that you think that he may reveal to us, because his critics are saying that he's treating this like a reality reveal, which is extremely unfair, because this is so important to the existence of our very planet if they are going to go rogue with a nuclear weapon.
Well, look, he may have in mind that we can pressure China sufficiently through indirect sanctions, or that we can persuade them to do what's necessary to eliminate the regime. But I think that that may be the one thing that will work. But really, you're down to two choices. Eliminate the regime through reunification or through coup. That's sort of a second best solution in my view. Or eliminate the weapons. That's what it comes down to.
Well, and again, I brought up those critics of the president, you know, trying to say that this was some kind of reality show. That is just woefully unfair. I mean, and it puts the American people in a weird position to have to decide not the messaging, but how it's being delivered. This stuff is way too important. Let's talk about Iran. The thought that the president may decertify Iran is something that you think could happen, and the deadline is looming on that decision.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to give a speech on Thursday. And, you know, I have to say, this is an issue on which people are very confused. People in the media, people in Congress, people who are normally quite sophisticated in understanding these things. People hear the term decertify. The president's going to say, I don't think this deal is in America's national interest. And they equate it with getting out of the deal. It's a perfectly logical assumption. But that is not apparently what the president's advisors are asking him to do. And that he may decertify under the Corker-Cardin legislation, but stay in the deal. And in fact, according to some press reports, will ask Congress not to reimpose nuclear-related sanctions. That's the Obama policy.
Does it put it more in the hands, excuse me, Ambassador, because I want to make this point clear, of Congress? Is that what he's doing? Is he moving the ball in that direction?
Well, that's what some senior officials of his own administration have said. I think that's inane. The president
because they haven't been able to agree on Obamacare after 7 years. Do we really want to go there? I'm just asking the questions.
No, look, as a matter of simple legislative politics, you give this hot potato to Congress now in the middle of an effort to get tax cuts and tax reform. Congress will do nothing, which means the default position is the Iran nuclear deal continues, the sanctions continue to be waived, and Iran continues to make progress toward deliverable nuclear weapons. That's why I have been saying the president's got to get out of this deal. He's got to cut and cut cleanly and make it clear to the world this deal is not only not in America's national interest, we will not abide by it any longer.
All right, I want to talk with you a little bit about the back and forth that some in the mainstream media have been very thirsty to cover, for lack of a better word, because they love when there's a rift, probably within any party, but specifically among the Republicans, it would seem, by their coverage. What is the significance of where the Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is and where President Trump is? President Trump saying that he thought in some areas Tillerson needed to be tougher. Speak to us on that.
Well, I think it's unfortunate overall, frankly, to have your top national security cabinet members and advisors speaking in public about what their personal views are on highly important and very grave matters of foreign and defense policy. And I'm not confining this to one member of the cabinet or others. I just don't think that these kinds of debates ought to be held. I think you hold them in the sit room in a National Security Council meeting or in the Oval Office. It's a privilege to work for a president in that capacity, and part of that privilege is you give him your absolutely candid, unvarnished advice. He makes the decision, and then you toe the line. And when the time comes that you can't toe the line anymore, you resign. That's the honorable thing to do.
I want to give everybody Bolton's bottom line on both these issues. One, with North Korea, the bottom line for you.
Well, look, I'd say on both of them, I think people are underestimating the president if they don't realize that he knows just how grave these decisions are. I don't like to talk about my conversations, and I haven't had any recently with him, but he does understand just how serious this is. And I think it's for the American people to understand how serious it is. If you leave North Korea or Iran with nuclear weapons, you're mortgaging our future and the future of all of our friends and allies in their respective regions. This is not something that you can simply say we need more negotiation on. We're coming to the point where we're going to have to make a hard decision. If we don't use military force, get ready for blackmail and extortion by North Korea and Iran for as far as the eye can see.
You do not mince words. Ambassador John Bolton, thank you very much for your time and your expertise on this. Again, deadlines looming in the next few days over the Iran deal. We'll be covering that as it happens, and stay on North Korea, too. Also, as we continue to go overtime now, the latest in the Las Vegas investigation. Why police are again searching the shooter's home, and what was found on the table in his hotel suite at the Mandalay Bay. And when it comes to the gun debate, Democrats want new legislation, but Republicans are pushing regulations on those bump stock devices the Las Vegas gunman used. Who is right in this? Can they both be right? What should we be talking about specifically? When both sides agree, nothing would have prevented this.
We need to look at the broader picture. We need to have an honest discussion about what works and what doesn't work. And our concern is that all this focus on devices takes away the attention from the underlying behavior. And until we address that, these things are going to continue to happen.
And this is developing. Police have returned to the home of the Las Vegas gunman Stephen Paddock. They're continuing to look for why he did this, the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history. One question that has been answered: what was on the note found inside the gunman's hotel suite at the Mandalay Bay? First responders on 60 Minutes said it had calculations of wind and trajectory from his 32nd floor hotel suite to the crowd below that he fired on. The responders also recounted that terrible night.
And just watching these rounds hit all like right next to us, and I'm like, how is he so accurate?
Bullets just raining down on
It's just raining down the whole time, and I just remember I'm just looking at my gun. I was like, I got a pistol in my hand. This guy's shooting at me with an automatic rifle.
Dan Springer is live for us in Las Vegas. Dan, give us the facts.
Yeah, hi, Harris. You know, members of that first SWAT team to get inside the Mandalay Bay Hotel last Sunday night tell a harrowing story of just trying to get to the gunman and all the pre-planning that he did to try to slow them down. We've talked about all the video cameras, surveillance cameras he put up to notify him when they were getting close. But in addition to that, he also screwed shut the emergency exit door to that hallway closest to his room. The police had to use a crowbar to get out of the stairwell and into the hallway. Then they saw wires on a room service cart, at first not knowing if it was a bomb or not. Turned out to be a camera, but they had no idea what to expect.
Now I'm standing out in front of this bullet-ridden door with nothing except for a shield that's, you know, I'm hoping would help a little bit. And that was the point I said. I was praying that nothing goes off of phone-wise or radios or anything, because we were trying to be as quiet as we can because we didn't want him to know we were out there and start spraying at us.
Once inside the room, they said it looked like a gun store. Along with Stephen Paddock's body, they found a note with a bunch of calculation of distance to the concert, elevation from that 32nd floor, and speed of his bullets, which told him where to aim to maximize the casualties. As for the investigation, it seems to have hit a wall. FBI agents were back at Stephen Paddock's house in Mesquite, Nevada yesterday, executing a second search warrant after interviewing his girlfriend midweek. They also interviewed Paddock's brother Eric for 4 hours late Saturday night and early Sunday morning. An FBI profiler and psychologist were involved as they try to get inside the madman's head. Meantime, more healing here in Las Vegas as Jason Aldean returned to meet victims who were still hospitalized. The country music star was on stage performing when the carnage began. Tonight live, he gave a moving tribute.
We hurt for you and we hurt with you, but you can be sure that we're going to walk through these tough times together every step of the way, because when America is at its best, our bond and our spirit, it's unbreakable.
And we've checked with all the local hospitals. 3 of the 4 got back to us, and so far we know that 48 people are still hospitalized. 25 of them are still in critical condition. Harris?
And they remain in our thoughts and prayers, all of them. Dan Springer, thank you very much. Well, as you know, outside of the human element of all of this is more forensics political debate. The gun debate is taking center stage on Capitol Hill. Democrats want new legislation. Republicans are instead pushing for regulations on bump stocks, those devices that the Vegas gunmen use to make semi-automatic rifles fire more rapidly. NRA Executive Director Chris Cox into new regulations, but not a ban. Watch.
What we've called for is for ATF to review any device that changes semi-automatics to function like fully automatics. As you probably know, it's illegal to convert a semi-automatic to fully automatic. ATF did approve these under Barack Obama. And what the National Rifle Association has said is ATF needs to do their job, review these, and if there's a further regulation, then we'll work on further regulation.
Katie Pavlich was on our Outnumbered couch, Fox News contributor and townhall.com editor. I've invited her back to talk about guns. So first of all, I caught on your Instagram you were in Arizona at a competitive alumni gun shoot. So I know you've been talking to other gun owners like yourself. A couple of things have bubbled up that I want us to kind of get deeper in. And one of them is why the ATF and not Congress to handle this particular push for a difference in the future?
So the first thing is that ATF has handled devices like this before. In 2004, they determined that a shoestring that was attached to a certain rifle that made the semi-automatic rifle fire more rapidly was illegal under the National Firearms Statute. And under that statute, essentially, it's all about the intent of the weapon. So if it's intended to convert a semi-automatic rifle into something that functions as an automatic weapon, that is something that ATF has said is illegal. Now, that's the question here with the bump stock. ATF approved it previously, as we just mentioned under Obama, saying it doesn't technically change a rifle, a semi-automatic rifle, into an automatic rifle. However, they're going to go take a look at this now and see if the intent is to make it function like an automatic rifle, and therefore they can say Congress has banned these, they voted it through, and therefore there should be more regulation.
And you think the ATF is the best way to do this because that's where this stood. They're basically going to have to correct whatever they wanted to. You can call it a mistake. You can call it whatever you. You know what I think is really interesting? You and I were talking earlier. Most don't even like bump stocks, and it's not something that is widely used. So I want to get your thoughts on that and some of the facts that you've dug up.
Well, the first thing is the reason ATF should handle this right now is because it's faster, and they've done this before, as I mentioned.
Then Congress? Well, yeah.
Well, then Congress, yeah, but Congress has already said that automatic weapons should be heavily regulated in this country, and therefore devices that make firearms that are semi-automatic function like automatic weapons should be regulated in the same way. So ATF can take a look at this, change their policy today, and implement it almost immediately. So that's the first.
Does the president need to get involved by maybe asking them to do that, or can they do that on their own?
They can do that on their own. They could do that today, something done by the end of the day, and then they could implement it throughout the week and decide if they're going to grandfather things in, what kind of reg you're going to put forward. Do you need to have a background check like you do with an automatic weapon? Are they going to be regulated like automatic weapons do because of the functionality? Those are all questions we'll have to answer in the meantime.
Do gun owners that you've talked with, Katie, feel that this is a situation that is a better match with what happened actually in Las Vegas? Because we do see a lot of political scooping. I mean, look, Nancy Pelosi said she wanted a slippery slope on legislation. So I don't know if that even goes as far as health care. I don't know where she wants to stop.
Look, the gun owners that I know, and I know a lot of them, they believe that the bump stock issue is something that we can discuss. But then when they hear someone like Nancy Pelosi say, yes, it's a slippery slope, and I hope that it would be, then they put the brakes on and say, well, then we have to reconsider, because clearly the motive coming from people like her is not about addressing the issue at hand and providing solutions that would prevent something like this from happening. It's about their broader gun control agenda.
Well, and we know that she's been contemplating whether or not she's going to run for re-election. A fifth term, I believe. Well, this woman has.
And her leadership position as well is in trouble.
Exactly. So Dianne Feinstein in California has already said today that she's running for re-election. And then coupled in her messaging will be this gun control debate. And she says she admits no law would have prevented the Vegas shooting. So I think everybody's on board with that. You don't prevent a crazy man. Let's watch and listen, and then we'll come back out.
Could there have been any law passed that would have stopped him?
No, he passed background checks registering for handguns and other weapons on multiple occasions.
The answer was no. No.
Which exposed her agenda and the anti-rights side of this gun control argument, and exposes their agenda as something outside of finding a solution to what happened and preventing it from happening again. We saw in the San Bernardino shooting the same exact thing. California has a whole lot of gun regulations that require more than the average American in other states, and yet these things still happen. So she's admitting we need more legislation, while at the same time promoting this pro-gun control, anti-rights agenda.
which pitches her far left, and that helps her platform because today she says she's running for re-election. Real quickly, I want to talk about other cities where you've seen strong homicide numbers. And I take a lot of criticism whenever I bring up Chicago because I'm talking specifically where Illinois has some pretty strict gun laws.
Right. Well, the vast majority of what they call the gun violence in this country happens in a very few select places. Los Angeles, Chicago, and other big. Baltimore is another one that's having a really bad year. There's a lot of gun control in those cities, and when you look at the statistics and you look at the problems, it comes down to not enforcing gun laws on the books and locking up criminals who violate federal laws. And the Trump Justice Department has made it a point to make sure those prosecutions are up. They dropped by 25% under the Obama Justice Department.
Interesting. The Boston Globe I mentioned on Outnumbered, but I'm going to say more now about their reporting. 78% of Americans do not gun, and the 3% who do have 17 guns each in a gun selection or gun collection type of category. So some of them are not even firing them.
Right, exactly. They might be handed down from generation to generation. They may be something that they just use as something in their house as a family heirloom. You know, gun owners in America, the vast majority, are good, law-abiding people. They are not like this guy we saw in Las Vegas. They're not even close in the same category. They can't be compared.
But at the same time, the NRA says, and others who are gun owners say, yeah, you know what? We support taking a look and reviewing at what's on the books about bump stocks, which is a device one-on-one match with what happened in this massacre with this gunman.
And I would say at the NRA and the NSSF and gun rights groups have been at the forefront of mental health issues, gun safety, and addressing issues related to when these things happen and trying to find a solution that will actually work to prevent this from happening. So they have been at the forefront for decades on this issue. They just don't get the credit for it.
Katie Pavlich, thank you very much.
Thanks,
I appreciate you coming in. Vice President's left an NFL game after some players took a knee during the national anthem. Democrats called it a political stunt. President Trump applauded the move. We'll talk about it with the Power panel. Stay close. You know, when President Trump takes someone on, they always get that short end of the stick. So one of his GOP critics, Senator Bob Corker, is spilling out onto social media over the weekend his issues. The president tweeted that Corker, who recently announced he won't run for re-election, had, quote, begged him for his endorsement, adding that he now expects Corker to stand in the way of his agenda. Corker hit back, tweeting, quote, "It's a shame the White House has become an adult daycare center. Someone obviously missed their shift this morning." The president later tweeted this: "Bob Corker gave us the Iran deal, and that's about it. We need health care. We need tax cuts and reform. We need people that can get the job done!" Exclamation point. Joining us now on the Power panel, Elrod, former director of strategic communications for the Hillary Clinton campaign, and back from the couch today, our hashtag one lucky guy, David Avella, chairman of GoPac. Great to have you here. I want to You have this in the Democratic Party already with Linda Sanchez on Friday, because I had a Democrat on set and he said, look, or on the show, I should say, this is not the right time. So you've seen some of this back and forth. Do the American people like this?
Well, you know, look, I think, you know, first of all, I know where Linda Sanchez is coming from.
Calling for the replacement of your House.
Well, which I disagree with. I think Leader Pelosi is the person that we need right now at this time, especially the way that she's united the Democrats in the House against some of these divisive policies that Donald Trump and the Republicans are trying to get through. But look, Senator Corker's not running for re-election. He has nothing to lose by going out there and speaking his mind about the kind of president that he thinks Donald Trump is. So I think it's great to watch him.
Of course you do. You're a Democrat. Yeah, you like to watch that.
Yeah.
But I'll just point out, and you know this is true, no one wins this battle with the president. I mean, if they want to tweet back and forth, what does that do?
You make an excellent point. No one who has gotten into a Twitter battle with the president has come out on the top end of that argument. And part of that is to his business background, that he understands when you get attacked, when your business is attacked, that is your reputation, that is your brand, and you always have to protect your brand. And so he is always about punching back. And as we said, he is tends to always win those punchbacks. But to your point, do people want this? No. People want tax cuts. They want to see Obamacare
That's what he says.
replaced. That is what they want. And we are and people feel very passionate about it right now. and hence why the political discourse has gotten a little tougher.
So you even pointed out, Adrian, why this is different. Bob Corker's not going to run again.
Yeah. Nancy
Pelosi is, well, she and Dianne Feinstein, I think she'll join her today in saying that she's going to run again. So as we move forward, these types of back and forth really leave the American people out.
Well, okay, you're exactly right about that. But look, again, he wants the president to succeed. He wants to see the Republican Party.
Everybody should want that, David.
Do what they have to do. But he is pointing out the fact that the president has failed on every single policy that he's tried to get through the Congress. And I think he is probably speaking out because, number one, he has nothing to lose. And number two, he wants to try to see some of these things that have gotten nowhere actually get somewhere.
Taking on the establishment.
That is what he has been doing since day one of his administration, though there has been common ground.
This is the swamp? Is that what we're looking at here?
No, this isn't the swamp. This is a very nice set.
Not us. But I mean, when you look at someone who would talk a president this way, is it dealing with the swamp?
As we talked about earlier, once you announce your retirement, your effectiveness starts to go down every day. And Senator Corker is going to find, like many politicians, his influence will start to wane, and he's not going to be able to go to his fellow senators and say, hey, let's not pass tax cuts for Americans because I got into a Twitter war with the president.
Yeah, okay, real quickly. He still has a vote, and that's what's so important.
I want to bring this up.
2018.
He's going to vote against tax cuts for the American people? Doubtful.
We've seen the president, though, go back over and deal with people that he didn't agree with. Look at Senator Lindsey Graham. They're out on the golf course. Remember when those two were sparring?
Sausage making and legislation are often the same, and you have to have a very short memory to be an effective legislator. And the issue you disagree with someone today, they may be your ally tomorrow, and that's what you're seeing, actual legislation being discussed.
All right, we'll be right back.